Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about another bookshelf essential volume, a volume that is essential to my library. It's based on a series of videos that the great David Wiley is also doing. And today's volume that I'll be talking about is Earth Abides. Earth Abides by George R. Stewart. This volume was published in 1949, and it's a post-apocalyptic novel. So, kind of an early post-apocalyptic novel. Not the earliest. Obviously, they'd been around for a while, but an earlier version from 1949. And it's really interesting. You will find a lot of the stuff that you find in later post-apocalyptic novels. You'll find a lot of that stuff in here. But its focus is very different. It's a it's a, it's a different kind of post-apocalyptic novel. It's about a fella named Isherwood, who we know as Ish because that's what he's called throughout the novel. And Ish is up in the mountains, and he's bitten by a rattlesnake. And it turns out, it's never explicit, but it turns out that this might be the reason that he survives what happens in this book. Because there is a pandemic in this book, a worldwide pandemic where a virus, possibly as a virus, wipes out virtually all of humanity. And Ish is unaware of this because he's up in the mountains and he can't get back, and he's very sick from the snake bite, and he thinks maybe the snake bite will just kill him. But it doesn't. He survives, but he's been up there for a couple of weeks. And then when he gets back down to civilization, he discovers that there's nobody around, and he's like, what the hell is going on? And then he discovers what has happened. That while he was up in the mountains, a worldwide pandemic arrived on Earth and just wiped almost everybody out. And for a bit, he's worried that he's the last human being on the planet. Could he be the last human? Turns out he's not, but there are not many people left. And the story focuses on, first of all, what he's going to do. What is he going to do now that he's in this situation? And eventually, a small group gets together, and it's what they are going to do. It's a really interesting book. Takes place mostly in Berkeley, which is a city I know quite well. And so it takes place in the San Francisco Bay Area in Berkeley. And so we get a post-apocalyptic vision of that area. And Ish, he's not a perfect character. He's not a perfect guy. He's like a real person. And this book has a realistic view of what would happen in this case, in the case of a worldwide pandemic that wipes out everybody. Ish's first move is he travels. He decides to travel to find other people. And that first part of this book is about that. He goes all the way to New York and back. He does find people, but nobody is in an organized state. And so when he gets back, he gets together with some other survivors and they decide to build a community. And the rest of the book is basically about that. The difficulties you would have in this new world where you're surrounded by the ruins of the old world, a world that is gone and over. There are not enough people left to keep anything running. I mean, the water is still running. There's still electricity because all that's still going, but it's not going to be going for long. And once it's gone, there's not enough people with enough know-how to keep it going. Even if there's not much they can do about that. And so eventually this community that Ish is a major part of, because he's educated, he was a graduate student at Berkeley when this happened, and so he takes kind of a leadership position in this group, and he wants to keep, he wants to keep the knowledge of our civilization alive within this new group and future generations. And so as they have children, as time goes on, he tries to pass down a lot of the knowledge of our civilization. And most people just aren't interested. It's kind of a losing game. Because now human beings in this little society of his have become hunter-gatherers, and they have very different interests and focus. They have a whole different outlook. They're kind of interested in stories of the old days, but they don't want to learn algebra, I mean, what good is it to them? They don't really care about reading, which is tragic. But it's a different world, and Ish eventually just has to accept the fact that a lot of the information he wants to impart, a lot of the knowledge he wants to give, is worthless to this new group of people. I mean, how much cultural value can this new hunter-gatherer society get from our world? I mean, what can we pass on that would be helpful? After a while, the canned food is going to run out. The cartridges in their rifles are going to run out or misfire. Bows and arrows end up being much more reliable. It becomes a whole new world. And Ish, as he grows older, has to adjust to this, and he has to deal with all the other challenges that come along when diseases or medical emergencies strike, for example, and there are no more doctors. I mean, things like that. How are you going to deal with those situations? It's an interesting book because it is about the development of people over time in this situation. There are no zombies. There are no giant killer plants. So it's not about that. This book is not about that. It's about other things. It's about culture and society and growing older, frankly. That is a part of this. Ish, who is a respected member of his community, eventually becomes known as the last American. He's kind of referred to as the last American here. And the newer people that grow up in this new world, they respect old Ish. And Ish has a hammer that he's been using for years to, fix things. The hammer actually becomes a symbol, kind of a symbol of power. And eventually, when Ish grows old, they want to know who the hammer is going to be passed down to, when all that was something that he used to fix things before in the old days. It's a really interesting book. I highly recommend it. It's, like I said, it's kind of like growing old, where you're growing up in a world and suddenly the world is not the world you knew anymore. And the things that you thought were very important don't seem to be important to these young kids. And everything seems to have passed you by, and most of the people you know are gone. It's kind of like that. But it's also about human survival. And it's also about how the world itself, the earth, will just keep going. It doesn't matter what the people on the planet are doing. The planet doesn't really care. It'll just keep going. And how important are all of these things in our culture that we think are really that important? If something like this happens and human beings have to start over, basically, how much importance is all of that stuff? It's an interesting book. And I highly, highly recommend it. Definitely an essential book in my library. And I've got this cool Eastern Press edition, which is really awesome. Really nice edition of this book. Earth Abides by George R. Stewart. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.